You're listening to CDKL5 in color. I'm Marissa, and on this podcast, I'm joined by my co host Amanda, and sometimes some very special guests to talk all things CDKL5 deficiency disorder. It's a rare genetic condition caused by changes in the CDKL5 gene. Patients with this condition often experience profound developmental disabilities, difficult to control seizures that start in infancy, cortical visual impairment, and a variety of other health concerns. It's a challenging condition, but we know that by sharing our stories, we can raise awareness, provide support, and paint pictures of our community that can lead to greater understanding and meaningful change for families like ours. Let's jump right in.
Hey, Marissa, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing pretty good. It is afternoon. We usually record earlier in the day, so this feels kind of neat. We have a guest today. Our guest today is Keshia. Keshia is mom of two. Her daughter, Emani, lives with CDKL5 deficiency disorder. Keshia is a developmental specialist and an author, and she's passionate about empowering women to live purposefully. She has a beautiful, positive perspective about special needs parenting, and I'm really excited. I can't wait to hear from her today. Welcome, Keshia.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. Your daughter, Emani, she's 16, right?
Yes, don't say it. She is 16. Yes.
Tell us about her. Tell us about her personality. What's going on with her lately?
So let's see. My baby girl, I still call her my baby girl. So yes, Imani, she goes by Imani. Her personality is very like, leave me alone and get out my face, okay? One year she got the friendliest award in her classroom, and I was like, now I understand what you guys are doing here, but my baby is not friendly. And so she is definitely very much okay, like do what you gotta do for me and leave me be. But me and my family members, we do the opposite because we don't want her just to sit. She is one of those kiddos with CDKL5 that will sit in her own bubble if you don't bother her. But we still do, I'm going to highlight my dad, who I love. He always he's the fun one, right? And so he'll go up to one of his grandkids, like put him in a headlock or something. Imani gets the same treatment, okay? Like, don't think that because she is nonverbal and things like that and has a low cognitive functioning that he does not do the same to her. And that's just kind of how we include her into our world. She's not in school right now. We tried to go back to school and she had an incident in November. And so I took her out, and so we're looking for some other schooling options. She fell out of a wheelchair on the bus, and I viewed the tape, like it was hard to watch. And so for her to get through that and not have anything major, I was just worried about her back. She had major back surgery last year. But I always say she's my trooper. She's the strongest girl I know. She keeps me strong because sometimes she's like, Mom, chill out, like I'm okay. But I'm like, no, you're not.
Wow. I'm so sorry that happened to her. That is so crazy stressful.
Yes, it was a time. Still not all the way through it, but
Yes,
I would say it
hard
could
to-
be worse. I think that's my mindset, and I think someone told me before, it was like, Keisha, but is that a good mindset? I say for me it is because I do know that it could have led us back in the hospital, and I do know that it could have, even with the struggles that we had after the spinal surgery, because the incision came back open, and there was this whole thing like, let's make sure it's not infected. And so I was just thankful that we did not have to go back to Atlanta. And so that's where my mind was. And so that's where I'm like, well, could be worse. So, we're going to get home and get through it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you can find some programming that is appropriate and trustworthy
Yes,
for her.
that's
Because
the goal.
I have my Ava is sassy and not nice, I would say as well. Sound like they have a lot of the same personality, but she really does love to be out with her peers doing things and getting a break from me.
Yes.
It's always nice to have a
Yeah.
break yourself as well.
Has it
Absolutely.
been hard in her 16 years? Has it been hard with the educational part of her journey, finding like there's not a lot of options where you live, or what have you found?
Yes, so that's the thing, right? So we used to live in the more metro area in like the Atlanta area, and I feel like I didn't really have any worries. My worries then it's because it was at the start of our journey. So it was like discovering what was going on, trying to manage the seizures and medicines and things like that. And so the schooling aspect of our lives when we were there was easy peasy or easier. There were, I feel like, more support. Where we are now was a more rural area. And you know how that is. And so every year it's like one high school, couple middle schools. And so it's like everyone is in like the same classroom, regardless of if they're in a wheelchair, if they're medically fragile, if they, may be lower functioning, but has explosive behaviors with autism. But because their intellect is lower, they put them in the same classroom because of their IQ, which is not always the best. Even in my town, we have 2 therapy places, to pick from. And for a while, it was one. And so it's just not as forward moving as we need for our challenges.
That's really hard. And I think a lot of families who live in rural areas face a similar situation that you do in terms of medical care, too, medical care, education, everything. There's just not as many options.
Well,
And if the
even
options aren't great, then you're kind of in trouble.
yeah, I mean, even having therapists doesn't mean they're equipped to help our children, right? A lot of them are
Absolutely.
intimidated by it, but do you have the skills? And so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What does her day look like?
Well, right now, my parents here again, I'm gonna call their names again. They are amazing. They are our earth angels. They are, yeah. So that's where she spends her days. My work schedule is kind of flexible. So she has therapies on 2 days a week that she goes to, and then she's home with them. And so I try to kind of make sure a lot of the lifting and some of those things are done. If she's with my mom, but my dad comes and helps lift her. And so they do the things for her when I'm away. So when I come back home, I try to get her outside. I try to get her into her stander. I try to get her to use her eye gaze machine. We had like a disruption probably from like March up until now with seizures. We went about a year, not seizure free, but we went about a year with maybe 10, 15, 20 a month to maybe 3 a month, which was like phenomenal for us. And I saw the change when we got on Fentanyl, and then now she's having a lot of myoclonic seizures, which are like really quick, back to back to back to back to back. And so I was on like a routine of putting her into her stander, using her eye gaze machine. We were up to her saying yes or no for more, no more for a bite of food. That's what it was. We're going to go to yes or no. So it varies. And then you know how that day and night is with circadian rhythm and all of those things. And so now we're trying to get that back in alignment too. But it also goes back to getting up, getting outside, getting some sunlight, because if you lay down, you're going to sleep a little bit more. So I try to really work a schedule as much as possible where I'm not out like all day. And if I am out all day, then like that next day I'm with her half of the day to kind of get some of that input in.
It's really hard when your kid's not attending school and all of the sort of responsibility is on you to fill an entire day. It's a lot, but I do find routine, like what you're saying, is helpful. So, from this time to this time, he's going to go in the stander. It's in my kitchen. I'm going to do dishes. Then I'm going to do this and he's going to be doing this. I'm always thinking about what's he going to be doing while I'm doing something, unless we're doing something together. But it's a lot.
I agree. And I think that, my journey just being more self aware about where I am, and like we carry it, we do it. Sometimes we do it well. I always get, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't have a choice. And so even still being upbeat, but then like, you know what? This is a lot. This is a lot that I've been carrying for however long with her. And as she's getting, I think I'm feeling it a little bit more because she's getting bigger, with her being 16 and with the back surgery, her back doesn't bend anymore. So I never realized the benefits of being able to bend your back. And so all those things are coming into play, which here again, going back to being in a rural area nursing, finding nursing services sometimes is tricky. And so that's also something that we've dealt with is I got the services available, I have the hours available, but I got to get somebody to fill it. Or, a nurse said, oh, they're coming on Monday. Nobody comes. So maneuvering all those parts, but my thing would be like sticking to it. This is your routine, but of course anything can throw it off, like she sleeps. So I had this day scheduled to do this with her. And me, I'm like still having her in her wheelchair, and she's like head hanging asleep. And my mom was like, "Just lay her down, let her sleep." Like, no, this plan for the day. I want to do X, Y, and Z. And so yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's nice to have a plan, but you have to be flexible also, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you have to give yourself grace. I mean, the device is there, right? You'll get back to it. You'll find your routine at some point, but it's I do terrible when I get thrown off of my routine. So I get it. I have that, like, it's just, if the day goes as expected, great. But when it doesn't, it snowballs.
Even when Monty was like not having seizures and everything was fixed and there were no surgeries. And it's like, well, wait a minute, it's calm. My brain is not worried about anything coming up. And so, yeah, that was kind of different for me. Is I just had to like switch gears a little bit because it's like, yeah, you can slow down a little bit. It's, being having such a busy life, sometimes taking care of your medically fragile child, that's not, it's our norm, right? But that's not the pacing of life for someone. Is that we're always managing seizures and planning a surgery. And when do I get it done? Or is it beneficial? Yeah.
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 Well, I think sometimes we get so used to living in chaos that when things do settle down, it feels really foreign and it's hard to get used to.
Absolutely, you said it. It's like we have
Mm.
to, just learn how to manage all the things, especially if you have other kids. I have another daughter, and so just still making sure that she still gets mommy, and so even having to learn that over the years of, taking care of Imani and going through a divorce, and then I still have a baby who needs to be nurtured, not just with a roof over her head, but she needs to be nurtured emotionally and in social, all of those things, just making sure that I hit all of those and then being able to look back and be like, oh, you didn't do it here. Still, like Amanda said, giving yourself grace and just trying to show up, as the best version that we can at the stage that we're at.
How old's your other child?
She's 13. She is
Okay.
13. Yep. So teenage years. Okay. So it's like, whoo, all right, this is good.
Yeah,
This is
it's such a different way that they need you, but it's, I feel
yeah.
like, almost more taxing. I don't know what to say. A lot of surprises in parenting.
When people say to you, I don't know, because I get that too. I don't know how you do it. When people say that to you, what do you think about how you are able to do it? I know you have this sort of perspective that's really positive focused. Tell us more about where that comes from and how you try and help other women.
I think I definitely could say it comes from my upbringing, my mom, my journey. Some don't know that I didn't have a neurological thing going on, but I went through the healthcare system. I had surgeries, I had a 50-50 chance to live, like all the things my mother and father's journey kind of paralleled mine, but it stopped at 5. It didn't go into 16. It wasn't debilitating, chronic, or any of those things. So, but my positive views about, I think, everything comes from my parents first before I was able to go off and be like, okay, wait a minute. Some of these parts of life, I have to pour from God. And so that is where I draw my strength from. This too shall pass, right? Everything has an expiration date to a certain extent. Like I know this is where our kiddos are, but this moment in time will get better. And that's just kind of how I go about it. I think about the positives. Here again, that's where it comes from. It could be worse, and so I try to say that to myself. Okay, there was a time where they knew me by face, by name, no matter what shift we were on at the ER, they knew me. Come on, and so that was my life in the beginning. I didn't have to wait in triage, but I don't do that anymore, so I just have to think about those things. And here again, depending on where someone's faith is, God doesn't make mistakes, and everybody has their own things with that. He gave me money for a reason, and so she's mine. She makes me better and stronger, and I just want women and people alike to know that being able to have that positive outlook, because I believe that if we sit and dwell on whatever it is we're going through, then it makes us sick mentally, physically, emotionally, like in every aspect of our life. Even being able to be aware of where you are emotionally, I think it takes maturity and it takes time to be like, okay, like I will use an example for Mother's Day. Day before Mother's Day, Imani had like a cycle of myoclonic seizures, and it made her cry. Imani doesn't really cry. She shows more emotion now than she did in the beginning, because in the beginning, whatever was going on, like you could bang her head on the concrete and she would not cry. I was like, oh my God, my child can't feel anything. But now she will, and so I'm sitting there, me and my daughter, we said we was gonna watch movies, and like a tears are just coming out of her eyes, as she's like tensing up. And then here I am, tears coming out of my eyes, trying to fight it. And I'm like, what are you fighting the tears for? Let them flow, Keisha. And I did. I let them flow in that moment. I have a couple close girlfriends that I've been friends with since high school. And so we had a group chat. I'm like, hey, I'm just sick of these seizures. I text them and I text praying hands. I have another friend who goes through the health system with her son, and she gets it. I'm sick of these seizures. And that was it. I was in that moment. So just giving yourself grace for that is what I do as well. And just kind of going from there. But I just think that look at the positive, because if I've dwelled on the negatives of my life and it led me to depression, okay? I will never tell anyone how to cope with their traumas, but there is hope. I always just feel like there's hope some way, somehow.
That's the only power we have, right? Is in how we choose to react or sit with things, That is the one thing that we get. And other people don't get to decide or impose on us. So it's really refreshing to be reminded of that, I guess.
Right.
And to have the support from people you can reach out to too. Not everybody understands enough about what other people are going through when they live a life that's similar to what we have going on to feel comfortable to be that shoulder. So it's really special when you do have people that are willing to be that shoulder for you. One of the things you mentioned when we talked before the podcast getting started was about self-care. So what are your favorite types of self-care? What would you recommend to other people?
Do something mindless. Our minds, I feel like, are always going. So that's one thing that I've tried to do. Just be in that moment, whatever it is. If it's looking outside, if it's hearing the birds chirp, do it. I go on walks now. I try to go walk on the water. I love the water. I love the beach. I don't want to get in the water, but I just like to look at it and just let my mind do whatever it does. I think it all starts with our mind, and I've also journaled. And so I would encourage anyone to do that too. Like I try to write, I write to God, or I'll just write something down. And that has really helped, how I feel for that day. But just being more intentional about those moments. And it may not be anything big, just turning off the hustle and bustle and do that. But I found take care of your mental. Take care of your mental. Don't neglect it. As I refer to God, my church, we recently had a Bible study about men being mentally and emotionally healthy, and how so many people aren't. And I'm gonna say, just we were talking about church and thing, because we hear, okay, pray and you'll be fine. And sometimes it's a little deeper than that, it's a little more than that. I'm not taking away from any of that, but I really need to sit and talk about how I'm feeling. I mean, that's what therapy is sometimes too. I've gone to therapy, like I'm just sitting down talking to someone about how I'm feeling. They will give me some suggestions, some action steps to kind of help me like dig deeper. If I'm missing something, if I'm missing something with my other daughter, Elise, like, okay, I didn't pay attention to that, and so I believe that it starts with that part of us, and then we could kind of be more intentional about ourselves.
I think journaling doesn't get enough attention. I used to journal when I was growing up and I don't any longer, but sometimes just getting it out makes all the difference.
I agree.
Well, it also forces you to focus on what is it, right? Like,
Yeah.
why am I feeling? What is bubbling up here? If you're listening and you go to therapy, don't be afraid to take some pointers for your other kids, because that's actually some of the best work I've done in therapy, is figuring out how I need to rearrange my thoughts or days to better serve my other child. So
I'm still trying to get better about it, right? Because one thing, me and my daughter, at the beginning, she was more interactive with her, and she would talk more about wanting her to talk and doing the certain things that she didn't do. And then as she got older, it kind of stopped. And then, having conversations with her, she's like, Mom, I don't think you understand how it makes me feel. Like, even when Imani had back surgery, it was a lot for all of us. And she was in the background with all this going on, and like no one sat down to talk to her to say, hey, this is happening, this is going to change this is going to change that. And so now when I go to the doctor, I say, hey, I'm going to take money here, we'll be back, because she automatically worries and she thinks that her sister's gonna have something bad happen to her outside of what's already happening. She's been able to tell me, like, Ma, you just don't understand. I worry about my sister, I worry about you. And I'm like, don't worry about me, I'm gonna be okay, but I mean, she's human too, and so just having those conversations with her now, and making sure that I do where I probably should have had them when she had the brain surgery or the hip, all of those major things, and looking back at some behaviors like, oh, okay, that's how that came out because I didn't do my part. I wasn't in tune enough, to know.
Sometimes we get so focused on our kid who has the really obvious and extensive needs that sometimes if we have other children in the home, I don't want to say they get forgotten, because of course they're not forgotten, but you're maybe thinking about parenting them, but you're not thinking about the connection between what's happening with their sibling and how that needs to be a layer of your parenting with them, because no one's talking to you about it, because there's not enough conversation about I'm trying to prepare myself for this surgery. I didn't realize I'm supposed to be preparing my kids' siblings also. And how do I even do that? It's really hard.
Agreed. It's evolving, it's changing, you learn and you do better. I always say, depending on where you are at in life with anything, you show up the best version of yourself as you can, and you look back and you realize, I could have did this better, and then you add what you could have done better on, and that's just kind of how it goes and to give yourself grace, because it's like, I didn't know. I didn't know. No one thought about it. No one brought it to my attention. I didn't know. And so just knowing what to do moving forward.
And I think having these conversations maybe is going to clue in another family who's younger at an earlier part of their journey to think about it a little bit different and maybe do something different than we might have done.
Yes.
One of the things we like to ask everybody who comes on is about, what are your unmet needs? What are the things that you or your family or Emani are lacking that if you had would really make a big difference for you or for your family? What would you say your top ones are?
I think some top ones are maybe a one-stop shop place of schooling, therapy, places for moms, mental health, stuff for your other kids. I'm not sure if that exists, but that would kind of stop some of the hustle and bustle. For me, also, I talked about nursing, something. Also, I feel that in the special needs community, a lot of things are geared towards certain disabilities, right? And no one kind of reaches the severe profound kiddos to still include them, because they still enjoy, it's still good for the brain. They may think that, oh, she's fine because she's just sitting there quiet, but it's like, I'm still trying to provide some type of brain stimulation for her. So something to kind of cater more to that more severe profound category.
Some of these families that have the benefit of going to like a big Napa center, because our kids' educational days are really therapy based, because they're not doing addition and subtraction usually, and they're more therapy based, to have a big center where you had more options for equipment and therapies, and I mean, that's the kind of learning our kids really need, sensory stuff. And yeah, one-stop shop, that would be cool. But I think you're exactly right. Like, kids that are really profound get left behind. It's very easy to let my son sit in his chair and just he'll sit there, because he's not going to fight for attention. He's not going to try and grab stuff. He's not going to make noises. You could let him sit there and he would sit there all day. And so to have more understanding from the school systems, from the therapy places, and from the general community, that just because our kids don't talk back to you doesn't mean they're not interested in what you're saying.
I agree wholeheartedly. Just from being
Yeah.
in education, being a teacher, being a mom, being a therapist, and I've always worked in self-contained classrooms. I've worked with the severe profound a lot, and I would go to the gym with my kids, and we would play basketball together. It's good. And I'm like, why are you doing that with them? I'm like, am I not supposed to? And so, but I think that that's definitely somewhat of a culture, because even when I talk to like older educators, and I think my mom, who taught for like 30 some years, so a long time and a long time ago, that mindset of, kids that are in wheelchairs, like respite, right? Like, make sure they're fed, they're changing, they're safe. And that's okay. But it's so much more than that. And I don't know if we have a different perspective because we're parents, but I'm sure there should be some therapists and teachers that have the same.
Yeah. I think our kids can surprise us all the time if we're paying attention. Sometimes you have to really be paying attention in order to see the little glimmers of understanding or funny new things that happen. But our kids are listening and learning and being part of our world all the time. And if we can take the time to have patience and encourage other people to have patience, they can be seen for more than what they're generally seen for. All right, Keshia, we're so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for listening. We hope you'll follow us on social media at CDKL5 in color on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and visit us online at www.cdkl5incolor.com. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to chat about? Would you like to be a guest on our podcast? Email us, cdkl5incolor@gmail.com, and we'll be in touch. Until next time.